Generally, throughout Scripture, being broken by God is not a good thing. We see throughout the Bible that the enemies of Israel were broken, Pharaoh's arms were broken, yokes, bars, gates, ships, works, idols, groves, and walls were broken. But there are a few instances where being broken is exactly what we need. Psalms 34 and 18, "The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit." Psalms 51 and 17, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit. A broken and a contrite heart, O God, thou wilt not despise." Broken hearts and spirits are just the type that God can use for his glory. We also see that throughout the Scripture, there were those who were hardened against God and against his will. They refused to be broken, and they still believed themselves to be above reproach. Consider the Pharisees and the Sadducees. When Jesus confronted them, they refused to be moved, either by his words, which were mostly direct quotes from the Old Testament, nor by the miracles which were of a surety done by him and could be attributed to none other than God. Psalms 95, 7 through 9. "For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your heart as in the provocation." The Hebrew word there for provocation is meribah. "And as in the day of temptation in the wilderness." The temptation is massa. "When your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my work." When we fall broken before God, we become vessels unto honor, suitable for the Master's use. Being broken, we know that without a doubt, we can do nothing on our own. The only power that we truly hold in this life is the power to submit. God reaches out to us daily to remind us that it's in everyone's best interest for us all to submit ourselves to him and therefore be hardened against our common enemy. Psalms 95, 7 through 9 was recalling a moment in the history of Israel from Exodus 17, 6 and 7, where God said to Moses, "Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place Massa and Meribah. That's provocation and temptation. Because of the children of Israel, because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" God would have his people to trust him. He went out of his way to show them his willingness to provide for them in every situation. Yet we see that when his people were hardened against the Lord, the rock was broken for them, when in fact they should have been broken before God. Speaking of that same rock, Paul said in 1 Corinthians 10 and 4, "And did all drink of that same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." When they came to the place where they could not provide for themselves, excuse me, the rock was broken in their place, and thereby they received life through this living water in the desert. This passage points ahead to what Paul would write in the next chapter. Continuing on with that same line of thought, from chapter 10 we read in 1 Corinthians 11:24, "And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, Take, eat, this is my body which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me." Physically, Christ was broken for us. The life-giving stream that flowed from his broken body was a direct result of God's willingness to provide for his undeserving people. When we surrender to God and partake of Jesus' body and blood as represented in communion, we acknowledge our inability to save ourselves. We proclaim him as the only source of sustenance in this dry and weary land. We must allow ourselves to be broken in him so that his Spirit might flow from us and be a blessing to all of those around us each and every day that he allows us to live. there any prayer